Yeah, I welcome you all on behalf of Association of Muslim Professionals to the AMP Webtalk. About AMP, AMP's full form is Association of Muslim Professionals, and it is a non-registered, non-profit organization and is registered in India, United States of America, United Kingdom, and Australia. AMP has completed its 12 years in serving our community in the field of education, employment, and empowerment. AMP has a vision to positively impact lives of 10 million people by the year 2030. AMP's mission is to empower the underprivileged for the greater benefit of the society and nation as a whole. AMP education, socially progressive, culturally vibrant, politically influential, and economically dynamic. So what AMP has achieved in these past 12 years is right in front of you all in this slide. You can just have a glance at it so that you can understand our achievements, what projects we do, what activities under these projects we conduct. We have SDPs, that is School Development Programs. So these are the things we do under this project. After that, we have Employment Assistance Cell. We call it EAC. So we have conducted 350 plus job fairs and job drives so far. With these number of things we have already done in that. We have a project on scholarships and self-employment. MP has its resource center with 600 plus career counselors. So far 2,000 plus students have been counseled so far. We also do awards and partnerships. So those were our main flagship projects where we work towards benefiting our community and nation. Apart from that, AMP's presence is as such. In this slide, you can see that on ground, AMP got more than 100 active chapters. We are present in 25 states and 16 countries with more than 6,000 active members. In AMP's online presence, we have 125,000 members and professionals who are connected to us through various social media platforms like Instagram, Facebook, Google Groups, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, and Twitter. If you wish to join Association of Muslim Professionals, you can just log on to www.ampindia.org/joinamp, and we will be glad to have you on board with us. All right, so that was all about AMP, and I'm sure all who are present here must have got a fair idea about AMP and its working in the field of community welfare. Moving forward to the session, I welcome each one of you once again on behalf of Association of Muslim Professionals. I'm Humaira Kabir. I will be your host today, and I'm working as Operations Manager at AMP USA. Assalamu alaikum, Shah Siddiqui sir. I hope you are able to hear us.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you for joining us. I will now quickly ask you to take over the session.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. All right. Welcome, everyone. I hope my voice is clear and the video. Sorry about the confusion. I don't know if it was at my end, but I was trying to log in for some time. Then I did, but then I got kicked out again. All right, so welcome back, and I appreciate you all logging in today for our yet another session of soft skills on employee motivation. So if the audio is clear, let's move on. As a recap, we did coaching and mentoring last week, and the topic was basically about making a relationship interpersonal and setting goals. So we talked about how to attain goals, and we would continue with our topic by focusing on the goal-oriented aspect of the last module. So as you can see, the motivational theories and employee motivation is a very popular topic, and you all can see how we have aligned it in our course of topics. So I'm sure you all have been following from the beginning and how we moved up from our top skills towards a learning aspect called coaching and mentoring. and then we take over employee motivation today. And we also have been able to use the chat box last week. So I want to thank you all. Most of you were right on the answer, the question that I posed, which was, the coach that Bill Gates has announced or has proclaimed to be his coach, where the right answer was Warren Buffett. So most of you were right, and we'll try to use the chat box as we move on by having you guys, interact, to a certain extent, because we don't want to be too busy with the chat box, because once I start sharing the screen, it might be difficult. All right, so let's delve into the motivational aspect of the area of the learning system that we have. And I'm going to start out with a pre-assignment, as I always do, keeping your learning curve in mind, especially the soft skills that have been imparted in you or have been given to you, made familiar with your training. With this in mind, let's start with our motivational theories. I want to start out with one question, just so to introduce the topic to you, as to if you all are happy with your job or if you like your job. Now you can use the chat box with a yes or a no. These are all closed questions, a set of questions, so that you all are, as we delve into this topic. So use your chat box, and I will give 10 seconds apiece, Y for yes and N for no, if you all can start writing. So the first question is, do you all like your job? And then the second question is, are you undervalued, or you feel that you are undervalued at the job? So if the chat box is open, I should be seeing some answers, but I don't see any type-ins. So Y for a yes and N for a no, and then we move on to the next question as to if you feel that you are underpaid at your workplace. So the next question is, are you underpaid? And then the last question is if you are looking elsewhere for a job. So with these 4 questions, you can type your answer Y for yes and N for no. And then I haven't seen any answers. I don't see any answers on the chat box. I don't know if it's disabled. However, if most of you have answered a Y, then there is something in for you in this topic, so that you all can closely watch and get the best out of this topic. All right, I have a message saying that the chat is in. Okay, so type your answers real quick. Give you like 10 seconds, Y for yes and N for no. And then the questions once again are you happy? Do you like your job? Are you undervalued? And you think if you are underpaid? Lastly, if you're looking elsewhere for a job, if you're trying to switch. I don't see any answers on the chat box. It seems that it's enabled now. So with this in mind, we can move on. I'm going to continue. Say most of you may have thought about it, and if you are reluctant, if you're feeling shy about writing it, it's up to you. But this is just a interactive exercise, a practice, so you all get the best out of this module. So if your answer is yes to all these questions, then I want you all, and this is a chance for you all to watch and enjoy this webinar very closely with the topics given to you, because the answer is you lack motivation. So this is how you would be introduced to motivation. If this is the point where from a workspace, from a business context, and from an organizational workspace, if your answer is yes to all these questions, then chances are you lack motivation. All right, I see one yes, 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 yes. Okay, great. All right, thank you for the interaction. Thank you for the feedback. I think the chat box just got open now, and I'm not surprised to see most of you having a Y for a yes. All right, not a single no. That's great. All right, so the questions I guess is clear and I have the answers here. I think we have spent enough time. So most of you have answered is yes. So I'm gonna just focus on this aspect, and I'm trying to tell you that there is something that is lagging behind. There is something in your work environment that lacks, that requires your attention. And more often than not, chances are that you all lack motivation. All right. So welcome to the theories of motivation. Welcome to the employee motivation. And I see a couple ends. So if you have an end, which means that you are satisfied, and if you are, satisfied, then this is a chance for you all to understand how to work with a motivated workforce and how to motivate them even better. All right, so let's move on with our chat box. I'm gonna, um, I'm gonna tell you all not to worry about the chat box now, and we'll continue with our seminar. All right, so here's what we will talk about in motivating yourself, in motivating your employees, and how to inhibit motivation. So first of all, we look at goals, how we attain goals in the workplace, and how we need a mix of all kinds of employees to have the team motivation. In other words, we will look at how we can attain goals by having the right mix of personalities and the right mix of the required skills in a workplace. The motivation theories dwell on psychological aspect of business, or the psychological areas of business, where we will try to look at how these formulas, how these theories evolve. So most importantly, we would have to look at trying to share the screen. All right, so here we will look into these theories of motivation, how to motivate employees based on these theories, and what factors are motivators in a workplace. So most of you are happy from what you're doing, and well, most of you are not happy from the chat box, and some of you are. And if you feel that you're undervalued, you're underpaid, and you need to look out for something else, then there is a chance that you are not motivated, you lack motivation. Now, why is this happening? And what are the factors that make you feel, and how we can improve your motivation by having these factors come into play, and how best to be motivated on a workplace is what we would study from the aspect of these theories. So the best part is you all need motivation, and I have some, hope the screen is in the slideshow mode. And we will link, we will talk about two major theories. Before we get to it, let's take a look at how the behaviors are relating to employee motivation. Remember, we have been keeping competencies as our underlying theme all throughout the phase of these training. So competencies are linked to behavioral indicators. So we have some behaviors that we need to learn, or that we need to learn from, or how we can have certain behaviors to have the right outcome. So it seems that undesirable behaviors will relate, or will come up with undesirable outcomes. So with this in mind, take a look at these key behaviors as to how the motivational theory works, and based on which we will try to look at how these theories will talk about what motivation is from an employer standpoint and from an employee standpoint. Most likely from a leadership position, from an influential position, you need to understand how best to motivate your employees, your workflows, your colleagues, your employees, and your friends, and your family members. It goes both ways. So as you can read on this slide, I'm just going to read out a couple. There is some personal benefit of doing the job well. There is one thing to talk about motivators and talk about the outcome and talk about how you can attain the goals and then the incentives attached to these goals. That's one thing, to have these goals achieved. But the other, the most important aspect, is how to have them understand it, and how to convince them of these incentives, of these goals, how they can be achieved. So these would be the areas which will come up with certain desirable outcomes based on some desirable behaviors. So we're more worried about undesirable behaviors that lead to undesirable outcomes. So these are a few points. If you can read it, if you can. Um, I'm going to read out number 7, recognizes and tackles morale issues. So we'll take a look at how a team morale is important, how an individual morale should be lifted, should be helped, and then so forth, how it impacts the entire team. All right, so with that, let's move on and we'll start out with a basic intro to motivation. This is to get you the best out of a confident and motivated employees and show them how to motivate the group, and then the pleasure of a comfortable environment and the fear of failure. There is always a mix of how an employee will find his environment conducive, how he can enjoy his environment, how his working environment will be enjoyable versus the fear of failure. So these are the two things that mostly will be balanced in this approach towards motivating employees. All right, to define motivation, take a look at it. I'm sure you all know what motivation is. It's a state of being, okay, to act confidently, a state of being, confident. That's how you would move. But there are some specifics to it. Most of it relate to your learning curve. Most of it relate to your inquiry process that we have set up in the soft area. So to take a look at these important points within the definition, it is your behavior, what causes you to act, okay? Whether you're optimistic or pessimistic. And then it involves biological, emotional, social, and cognitive forces that activate your behavior. So with these topics, I'm sure it rings a bell. You all know what topics I'm referring to. If you have a chat box open, you can write it for a second. What soft skills topics that you have studied that involve the aspect of motivation that we would be dealing with. I can't see the chat box, but I'm going to get to it later. Okay, but don't spend more than 10 seconds. Name 1 or 2 topics of soft skills that you have learned here in the series that would actually help you understand motivation. All right, I'm going to move on to our main topic of the day, which is a psychological approach to motivating employees, or a psychological theory to understanding motivation. Most of these theories that impact motivation in the workplace, or the workplaces evolve by understanding that motivation is a requirement. And this was obtained from different areas, from social sciences, from the social area, where the social scientists came up with these behavioral related approaches to development. All right. The first theory that I'm going to talk about when it comes to employee motivation, the most popular, is known as the Herzberg model. It is named after the social scientist, whatever his first name was, Herzberg, and his popular theory has been in demand for a long time. And this is actually a bit, this was a radical approach to motivation, as opposed to the next theory that you would be studying, which actually makes sense as it moves up in order. So Herzberg's theory is known as a 2-factor theory because there are 2 major elements in here. And then these elements are classified as motivational elements and hygiene factors. So motivational factors and hygiene factors are the 2 major aspects of this theory. And how does it approach? It approaches by understanding an employee's level of satisfaction and dissatisfaction. Satisfaction here refers to job satisfaction and job dissatisfaction. And Herzberg says that job satisfaction and dissatisfaction are both not related, are independent, are not exclusive, which means that satisfaction is one thing, having job satisfaction is one thing, and having a job dissatisfaction is another aspect of your organizational obstacle. And these 2 are not related. A person who's having satisfaction can get rid of satisfaction, but does not mean that he is going to be dissatisfied. So this is how Herzberg approaches. I'll give you an example. If there is something that you like about your work, and then you are motivated and you are working towards achieving your goal based on the fact that you get to enjoy it, that would be a sense of satisfaction for you. That's what entails job satisfaction. While at the same time, there are some other factors, okay, that disappoint you, that you don't like, that are absent, and that will cause dissatisfaction. So by having this dissatisfaction, it doesn't mean that your satisfaction has lost. So Herberg says that you would still be satisfied, you would still be motivated, okay? And then dissatisfied on the other end, which means that um, you are satisfied, and the opposite of satisfaction is not dissatisfaction, but absence of satisfaction, okay? And the same way, if you're dissatisfied with some aspect of the job, and then if you get to have those aspects, which means that you've got everything that you were dissatisfied for, but this doesn't take you towards satisfaction. This only takes you towards absence of satisfaction. All right, this might be a little confusing at this stage. As I said, this is a radical approach to motivation, or a radical approach to the motivational aspect by Herzberg. But we'll take a look at some additional examples and see how this entails. But this is very important for you all to understand. In the entire webinar, we have to understand what satisfying factors are, what motivators are, and what dissatisfying factors are, non-motivators are. And these are termed as hygiene factors. So it's very important for you all to apply at your workplace to understand why you gave me a yes, yes, yes to all these set of questions that I gave you. And for you all to understand your workforce and to understand how a confident workforce will achieve the best of motivation. All right. So if you look at the bottom part of this slide, maybe the next slide will help us. As I said, this is a two-factor model, and there are two major factors here. One is leading to dissatisfaction, and the other one is leading to satisfaction. Okay, so if you think what motivates you at work was monies, your pay, all right, or your package, or your compensation package, or your insurance, or any benefit that you may have, then this will surprise you, saying that the leading satisfaction indicators or the leading motivators are not money, but achievement at the workplace, recognition, and the job itself. Okay, so this is what the theory of motivation by Herzberg says, that the leading motivators are achievement, recognition, and the work itself. This is what keeps you going. In the absence of these three, you are, not to say that you are dissatisfied, but it means that this is absence of satisfaction. You don't have job satisfaction because these three things are missing, but it doesn't mean that you are dissatisfied with your work. Okay, so we have stressed on that. Now his other factor is known as the hygiene factor, not to be confused with your personal hygiene, but this is just in terms of your determination. Okay, what factor leads to dissatisfaction at the company, at the workplace? Is not having the right company policy. Okay, say for example, there is not a clear policy about discrimination. Okay, and if there is favoritism, okay, if you don't have a fair supervisor, he's biased and he believes in his personal gratification, and he doesn't believe in a greater good or the teamwork, or he doesn't bring in the benefit of the team, then this is a leading dissatisfying factor for you. In the absence of these two or the work conditions, you are not satisfied with your job. Okay, so these are the factors that lead to dissatisfaction. And once again, this has nothing to do with your satisfaction on the right-hand side. So in other words, if the employer is getting you the right company policy, okay, and the supervisor is great, he keeps everyone happy and he looks for everyone, he's not biased, and then the work conditions are fine, which means that you have the equipment that you need, the resources, the light, the sunlight, I mean, and the company environment, and then the friendly environment, whatever you call. When the company provides you all of these three factors, then the leading to dissatisfaction is eliminated. But that doesn't mean that you are satisfied. This means that there is an absence of dissatisfying factors. I hope this aspect is clear. If you want to apply this at your workplace, you do have to understand that your job will require for you to recognize. So your answer, yes, when you said you are undervalued or you are not motivated, was because you don't have the recognition that you demand at workplace. This is the most important aspect in Herzberg's theory of motivation. And this is also so you all understand that once you're recognized, once you enjoy the job, and once you feel a sense of achievement, meeting your goals, then that is your biggest motivator at the workplace. That's how you are motivated. And the items on the left-hand side, in the absence of these good items, these policies and supervision, you are dissatisfied. But it doesn't mean that you are not satisfied with your job. You still have your achievement recognition of the work itself. So if you were to look for a job, or if you were to improve your environment at the workplace, if you were to improve your team morale, if you were to improve the motivation of the team, then you have to believe in recognizing every person, believe in their achievements, okay, and believe in their interpersonal relationship. And then if you want to improve the motivation further and remove the dissatisfying factors, make sure that in your team, as an employer, as a leader, as a promoter, as a coach, as a mentor, you remove the aspect of dissatisfaction, which is giving them the perfect environment to work, the resources to work, okay, and maintain a fair, equal employment opportunity for everyone, for advancement as well as for for training and what other aspects of the business is. So these factors will remove the dissatisfaction. I hope we have spent enough time on this slide. I hope this is clear. And with Herzberg's theory, we will look at into the next, or the equally famous and prominent theory by Abraham Maslow, which is titled as the hierarchy of needs. This is a very popular and easily adaptable approach to motivation. I'm thinking you all have been familiar with this theory. And then Herzberg's theory comes first in most cases. However, it's poorly understood. It's sometimes misunderstood as to what motivational factors are. And I hope we have spent enough time and it's clear for you all to apply it to your workplace and gauge yourself into your answer as to why you are undervalued, or why you are looking for a new job, or why you feel that you are underpaid. All right, so the next theory that complements Herzberg theory, although not so much in line with Herzberg, but also not incompatible, is the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. All right, this is the famous pyramid where you start off with some physiological needs at the bottom and end towards self-actualization needs to attain the highest level of motivation and the highest level of achievement. What this model talks about is how an employee needs to have his basic physiological needs met, which are food, water, and sleep. Once this is provided, he would move up to seek or to enjoy the safety features of his work environment, which relates to the job security. Security of self is nothing but job security. You want to make sure your job is secure. People adopt to the types of job that never lay them off. Like, for example, government positions. Why? Because they feel that this is the most secure job for me and my family. But if you compare it with the other model, are you satisfied? Do you have the motivators in there? Do you get the recognition? The achievement is what you would debate. But in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you move up from physiological to safety, from safety to family and friendship, love and belonging and so forth. And this relates to some of the topics that we have studied in the past, and we'll get to it. And once the employee achieves, or once an individual achieves the family and then this is also known as the social area, the social needs, then he would move up to having self-esteem. Okay, trying to understand, how self-esteem will boost his confidence. Have not Let's look at the negative. Not having self-esteem is of course undesirable, right? However, this is not a motivator. From what we see, a person will continue doing his job, okay, although he deserves, he lacks the self-esteem that he deserves. But this doesn't mean that he is going to not work or he's going to be dissatisfied. Because as you move up on the hierarchy, you have to understand that not everyone will get to the highest position. Not everyone will have everything that they need. And not everyone will be motivated up to their max. So if there is something missing, then that's, say, for example, self-esteem. But that doesn't mean that the employee is not performing his job, not attaining his goals, not achieving what he's required to. Although self-esteem is weak. And as you move up to self-actualization mode, which is the smallest, or which is with a very limited positions, which is for very few employees who move up on this aspect of pyramid onto the topmost, where you require critical thinking, require decision making skills, and so forth. Then at the highest level of motivation, or the pinnacle of the pyramid, is morality, which is the self-actualization needs, okay, and which is a need relating to the highest level of motivation. And this aspect of the needs will describe how an individual within a workplace or with a certain job position or title will move up. And the most important for him is the food, water, and sleep. And as you move up, the highest level of motivation can be achieved by self-actualization reach. Here comes empowerment. Here comes critical decision-making powers, leadership abilities, and then how he can generate power, or how he can empower other people, and then so forth. So with this in mind, with hierarchy, Maslow's hierarchy, you can compare yourself with Herzberg's model of motivation. And if you look at these top two things, morality and confidence, you can tell from Herzberg's model that these are the top motivators, okay? And then if you look at food, water, and sleep, these are what? In fact, even security. This is what? Security would be more of a hygiene factors. So which means that in the absence of these two, as per Herzberg, an employee will not be satisfied. And as per Maslow, these are the most important things for a person to be motivated at the workplace. Okay. So how do we apply this is the question. How would we apply Maslow's theory at the workplace? What would you do? This would be my question. Well, if you look at the bottommost requirement is food, water, and sleep. As a leader, as a manager, or as a supervisor, what would you do? You would make sure that the employee is happy. We talked about stress management, how sleep is important. Water is readily available, but the important factor that many employers focus is food. What would they do? What would they do with food? You would provide food, or you would provide subsidized food, or you would provide food for free, which is if you offer a free lunch at your workplace. Do you think this would be a motivating factor? Absolutely. This would be the best motivator. I'm sure the big companies that we talk about do this. And a lot of organizations you've seen provide very, very stylish, state-of-the-art gourmet lunch at a very, very minimal price. But if you were to provide food in certain markets for free, this would be the best motivator. Okay? So this is what you would learn from this module. And you would see how different this is from from the Herzberg's model. I hope you're getting it. Question for your chat box. Last week we did coaching and mentoring. Where do you think coaching and mentoring will fall as a motivator on Maslow's hierarchy of needs? You would have to write the box either number 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Now, coaching and mentoring, we spent enough time yesterday. We took it as a learning event, as an aspect of learning. And we talked much about the mechanics of coaching and motivation. So where do you think coaching and mentoring will fall in Maslow's hierarchy? And then if that is the case, how would you fit that in? If that is, a motivator, where would you fit that in? So this is a chance for you all to compare these two theories. These two are the most important theories from a psychological aspect of understanding the employees. We talked about interpersonal goals. We talked about emotional intelligence. We talked about stress management. And then empathy was also in demand. I was looking at the Q&A, but I'm not getting to that right now. So question now is, where would coaching and mentoring fall? Do you think it's a motivator? It's a requirement for your goals and for your personal development, for your interpersonal skills, but is that also a motivator is my question. And with that, let's move on. The two models of motivation can be compared here as a list of needs, where Maslow defines starts from a physiological to the self-actualization needs, and then the Herzberg model, which only talks about satisfaction and dissatisfaction. So here you are to decide which theory fits best in your own personal track to moving up, or your promotional aspect. And then you can decide how best to apply by comparing the list of needs and the factors, the hygiene factor as well as the motivating factors. Also, here, this is a chance for you all who said N for your answers to see how best you can motivate your set of confident employees and how best you can get to their highest level of achievement. With this, we can move on, or I can pose one more question as to what your topmost motivators are. Okay, what your topmost motivators are in Maslow and in Herzberg. Okay, and the next question would be, well, I'll ask you after this video that we complete on motivation.
Henrietta and her supervisor, Carlos, were working on a recipe for a new formula of baby food. They'd spent all day discussing their options, brainstorming, and coming up with several solutions to their problems, but had started getting bored halfway through. They didn't have the motivation to continue until Carlos suggested they use Herzberg's theory of motivation to identify those factors which motivated them and those which dissatisfied them. Henrietta agreed and immediately stated that she felt putting in overtime wouldn't measure up to the pay she received. Together, they reached an amiable solution to her motivational problems and managed to come up with a new formula. Henrietta was happy and motivated, and Carlos was relieved that his employee was satisfied.
All right. So you had a brief on Herzberg. Now you always run into a situation where you're working with your colleagues or your team, and suddenly it's not moving ahead, it's not moving up. So you're not getting to the point, okay? You're not getting to concluding your discussion, or you're not getting to the solution. So what would you do? You would basically write down or think of Herzberg as a model and see what the motivating factors are and what the dissatisfying factors are. And once you can chat down or list the items relate to your project, to your discussion, that it would be very easy for you all to understand why, or the meeting is not moving, or why employees are not motivated. All right, question for your chat box. Is money a motivator, or is money a top motivator? It's very easy to answer. Okay, I'm sure you will say a no as per the Herzberg's model, because it is not a topmost indicator on the list of motivation. Now, most of you may be surprised, but that's how it is from Herzberg. The topmost motivator is your recognition. Okay, so if there is anything related to um, the monies, then you can rule it out as not the topmost motivator. All right, the next question for your chat box is for example, is job enrichment relating to your job profile or relating to the HR a motivator? Where would you fit this in? Is job enrichment a motivator? And the next point is empowerment a motivator? You can write it down on your chat box and I'll look at it later, just so you all understand from a Herzberg standpoint, because this is not money, okay? Job enrichment is a specific aspect of your job description or your areas of recruitment. And then empowerment is mostly not, not anywhere in your job description. However, it is very much in fashion. All right, so these were the two top models that you all have to be clear on when it comes to motivation, and we're a little behind, so we have to move fast now. All right, the next model is object-oriented theory, related to your object-oriented methodology. You all know that object-oriented methodology brought about a revolutionary change in the world of computing. It turned out to be very simple, right? Look at the object, then do something, as opposed to your psychological aspect of the theories where you have to think of a need, but here it's visible, all right? So for those of you who are in the IT field, you all can appreciate the importance, the promotion of the object-oriented methodology. And I think Apple was one company back in the 90s, how it came up with its operating system, which was based off all objects when DOS was in use. So here we'll take a look at some very traditional theories. The first one is the carrot and the whip theory, and then the plant theory as an example of an object-oriented theory. Now, what is the carrot and the whip theory? You all know about how a carrot is, used to motivate your cart. This is from back then in earlier days, last century or so, where horse carts were used, and there would be a carrot hanging in front of the donkey or the horse, the animal, who would look at it, and in order to grab the carrot, he will move the cart, and the goal kept continually, moved ahead of him. In the end, when the employer or when the owner of the animal wanted to reward, for taking care of the cart and for pushing it at a certain pace, and if he so chooses, he would reward him by giving him the carrot in the break time. Okay, so that was the carrot theory. And then we always have goals here, okay, that are continually moving, and how your employer, your supervisor can reward you with an incentive. So this is how, a visible, not so psychological theory works for motivations. Now, employees will be tested here all the time. And this is ending with the promise of reward. And then the goals, the reward must be attainable, achievable. So you always keep, many sales organizations have a sales contest. There is always a competition, and he who wins, the team wins, will get a free trip to Las Vegas. This is, a common, but it's at a different level, different organization, different level. For senior, technical members of the team, there is a different, okay? And then some very, 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 very difficult organizations in network marketing apply different tactics as a carrot. They play with the psychology of the mind. They talk about having a watch, a Rolex, and so forth as an incentive. And then this comes towards the end by giving them either a fake incentive or a duplicate stuff or anything not up to the par. But that is one way of showing the carrot. And then this is a reward, a promise to a reward, and this might be achievable. In many cases, they give you a free voucher for $100, $200, whatever, but those vouchers hardly work anywhere. All right, so this is the object-oriented theory, which talks about how you can show a physical incentive and have them work for it. But it doesn't work everywhere. There are certain industries that apply. And then along with carrot comes the whip. The whip is a word, of course, an English word, but in different regions, different cultures, it sounds different. A stick. Spare the rod, spoil the child. You may have heard about it. So this introduces a culture of fear and introduces an element of threat. And the whip was used when the horse was pulling the cart with the carrot in front of him. And then when when his motivation would wane, then the whip would be in action from the back. But of course, whip is a very controversial aspect of motivation. You cannot use it everywhere. It's not legal to punish your employees. And then motivation through punishment was a possibility, was there, especially in some areas like the military and back then, where punishment the fear of punishment would motivate them. So that was an example of a object-oriented theory. And then the next aspect of motivation is using the plan theory, where the employee is taken as a plan, and the employer, when he needs to nourish his plan, he will have to feed the plan with everything possible, a combination of skills, resources, and needs. So a plant grows into a shrub once it receives the right amount of water, sun, and the nutrients. So that was one way of grooming the employee, by providing him the positive support and value, and each employee will require different nourishment. Every employee is different, just like how a personality varies from each employee, so does the requirements and the needs vary. Now, these are just theories, and I'm not trying to encourage you all to just believe in Herzberg or the Maslow, but also in the carrot, not the whip, but the carrot and then the plant. So this is a mix of everything, where you would be able to grow with your employees and have them develop.
Georgie and Wanda owned a small bakery off Main Street and were staying late to figure out some new methods of employee motivation. They'd had some trouble with their baker, who arrived late and didn't seem to enjoy his work. They were at a loss until Wanda suggested they discuss the carrot and the whip theories. Wanda suggested they provide better incentives, and Georgie agreed. They sat down and figured out what their baker would benefit from the most and how they could keep him motivated without using the whip. They narrowed down their options and presented their baker with incentive for working harder and arriving on time. Both Georgie and Wanda were overjoyed when their business benefited from the increase in productivity and happier baker.
All right, so this was one good example of object-oriented theory. Now, this is a certain industry, like I said, a certain aspect of business, the bakery, and how you can motivate them with something visible, okay, is what's best for their motivation. I will move on to the reinforcement theory, okay. As you all can understand, reinforcement is a support, an additional support, okay. And this is how the reinforcement theory works as a successful, it holds good. The reinforcement theory holds good even today as a successful and coherent, and then a valid method of ensuring best performance and the highest motivation. So what happens in the reinforcement theory is, we all look at how the behaviors will come up, an aspect of an individual, how he will act or react among his coworkers, or how he would erupt among the company of his colleagues, or under a certain board, under a certain work. So how he would react to a problem within a set of employees, as well as how he would react to a certain task that's given to him. So here we have always an incentive, okay? This is based on a certain stimuli, which means that the reinforcement theory works on an outcome, how an employee will react to a certain stimuli. And for that, there is a positive reinforcement and a negative reinforcement. A positive reinforcement would be, an example would be if you eat right, if you eat all your vegetables, then you will get a candy bar. This is an example how we would reinforce as a positive, as in a positive manner to a child. And at the same time, how we would give a negative reinforcement as to a timeout for doing certain things. So this is relating to your behavior, as behavior will come up with the modification. As a behavior is modified, so is the motivation, so is the willingness to achieve his goal. For example, if an employee is willing to transgress, for example, an employee is willing to deviate, he always would like to go and talk to somebody, in the next cubicle. So what is he doing? He has a certain mindset to transgress, to go out of his place or to deviate. And then he is doing this for his own, relating to his own behavior. As a behavior, he is used to transgressing. So when transgression would lead to time off, or for transgression would lead to a loss of freedom, or for some extra work, which some organizations believe in, then this behavior will change when he looks at how his freedom is taken away. So by reinforcing a negative aspect of his behavior, then you see a difference, a replacement or a modification in his personality by the aspect of motivation through reinforcement. So this is an example of how a reinforcement theory works, because anytime there is a deviation in a behavior, in a modification aspect, then there is always time loss, then there is always deviation from the goals, or it becomes detrimental to your task, to your work environment. So behavior modification is what comes next when it comes to reinforcing, and there are 4 steps. But before we get to the 4th step, we do have to understand how a good behavior will lead to a good outcome, and how an undesirable behavior will lead to an undesirable outcome. Now, this is the basis for which every competency is attached to a behavioral indicator. Go back to your HRM module, where we talked about the competency-based HRM. This is a newer aspect of HRM, where all the functions of HRM, from recruitment, sourcing, and compensation, and different functions of HRM are all related to behavior. In this aspect of HRM, or having competency-based HRM installed in any organization, we pay attention to the behaviors of each individual. This is so important that whenever a person is seen doing a task in a certain way, his behavior is to be copied, his behavior is to be recorded and applied so other people can learn. This is the basic aspect. So the behavior is learned, and the behavior that people come up with, is an important aspect of motivation. So a learned behavior is a good behavior, but how would you figure out what a good behavior is? This is by having a person from a regular or a normal behavior come up with a modified behavior. And this is done in 4 steps. So the point here is to understand the theory of behaviorism, which is based on the law of effect. And the theory of behavior tells that how a behavior can be modified to achieve the goal. And modifying the behavior will impact the level of motivation. So there are 4 steps to behavioral identification. One is, first of all, define the behavior. Why would you define the behavior? Only when the behavior is being deviated, when it's indicating that it's a negative behavior. So you have to define the behavior. Then you have to find the frequency of the behavior. If the behavior is wrong, how often does it occur? Okay. Because this is once again costing you your goals, your manpower, your man hour, and your time. And then to modify the behavior, you have to allocate a consequence. You have to tell them that you are the one who would be facing the consequence. And if it gets repeated, which means that there is no modification in the behavior, then you would have to change the consequence, which is fine tune the consequence, either make it difficult or make it different. So behavior modification is an important aspect of motivation, because this is how a person is motivated. And due to behavior modification, the other aspect of business, the other person, the coworker, is also coming out of his dissatisfaction, or from a Herzberg's point of view, his factors for dissatisfaction are reduced. All right. I'm going to have to give you an example because this is a little dry area. For example, how would you define a behavior to be modified in a workplace? Say, for example, you have an employee who is achieving his goals and who is on time, at par, being recognized. But he has a behavior that needs to be modified, because we always say that, well, he is good in that, right? Well, but he's very strong in that, which means that his behavior has been identified, has been defined, and he lacks that aspect of, or he lacks the attitude towards behavior modification. So you have recognized and you have identified a person who has a behavioral problem, is what I'm going to say here. Let's use the word behavioral problem. And so you do have to define his behavior and identify it. How would you do it? Let's say he is used to going to his coworker every 15 minutes, asking him for a cigarette break, or he just going to his coworker, talking to him every hour for 5 minutes. Okay, now that's a distraction for the other employee, but this is his behavior and he goes there. So you have identified the behavior, you have defined the behavior. His behavior is to go and distract the other person every 1 hour for 5 minutes. Okay. And then if this is happening every 1 hour and then he's there for at least 8 hours, then this happens for 8 hours, right? So this is the frequency of the behavior. This is how you will record the rate it occurs. So it's happening for 8 hours. 8 times 5 is 40 man hours, or half an hour, half man hour is gone. And if you look at how the other person is losing on his, or who's gaining on his dissatisfaction, then you will add another 40 minutes to it for the entire day. So it's more than 1 hour of manpower, employee pay, employer pay, and the employer resources down the drain because of one requirement in an employee, or one behavior modification needed in an employee, or one bad behavior. So what would you do? How would you put up a consequence and change it? You would tell him that, you're disturbing him, or you tell him that you're being recorded on the camera, and then the person will have to avoid. Or you would move them apart, different areas, or, change the work hour, something like that, or change the lunch break. So you have put up a consequence. And if it doesn't work, if the person still goes and bothers the other person or somebody else in your absence while the camera is not working, or while you're not watching as a supervisor, then you have to fine tune the behavior by changing the consequence, by letting him go or putting him totally in a different area. So this is the theory of behaviorism. It needs to be identified and checked frequency, and as well as change on or fine tune the consequences. What is the best way for the workplace modification from the reinforcement theory is rewarding the employees, encourage to continue good work, curb poor behaviors. This is one aspect. Now, performance-based incentives is one aspect of the compensation plan that the HRM has been looking into. This was not there. You would get a salary and commission, right? And these were mostly salespeople who always either had a base salary plus commission, and slowly the salary went up and the commission is what they lived off. Why? They kept the motivation level. That's how they were motivated. But some people are motivated that way, some people are differently. So how would you treat rewarding employees, general employees, by keeping an incentive based on their performance? So it's known as performance-based incentive, PBI. This will encourage them to work, and then the poor behaviors would, would be curbed. And this is how, and we saw that the steps involved in relating to the behavior. So behavior is an important aspect of HRM, of business. And this is a psychological aspect because behavior has something to do with his traits. And if you remember the iceberg model, how the employers are trying to get the hidden traits, which will predict the probable behavior of employee in the future. So we're not talking about hard skills, we're only talking about the soft, and within the soft, those hidden traits, how that will impact the workplace motivation. And this has a lot to do with motivation, and has a lot to do with behavior. Behavior is a topic that relates very heavily with your empathy or with your emotional intelligence. And then the last topic that we did, question for you, the last topic that we did, motivation and coaching, or having a coach, is the reason why you have workplace motivation. So coaching or having a coach is one way to motivate a certain employee. Or if you are motivated and once your motivation wanes, then it's time for you to have a new mentor to be further motivated. Okay, say you're an achiever, you have achieved it, you're almost at the top level. How would you motivate? I think we'll talk about this as we move on. All right, this one.
Julian, Pete, and Julio were hard at work in their office, organizing a presentation for the following day. Julian and Julio had spent hours researching and refining the details for the presentation, but Pete seemed to loathe helping them. Pete had fallen into the habit of laziness, and both Julian and Julio were frustrated with him. They decided to channel that frustration into a healthy outlet and suggested that Pete practice behavior modification in 4 steps. Pete agreed, and they went through the 4 steps to change the consequences of Pete's laziness. The motivational and behavioral technique worked, and all 3 men were happy when Pete started sitting up and helping out with the presentation. Because of their quick thinking, their presentation was a resounding success.
All right, that was, focusing on the behavior. We're going to move on to the next theory known as the expectancy theory. So this tells you that you are in the physical world now, so much of the psychological aspect of the theories. Now, let's see in reality what we can expect. And this was initiated by Victor Vroom. So unlike the Herzberg's model and the Maslow's theory of needs, Victor Vroom's theory thrives on the goals, the outcomes, okay? And he thinks that the needs and the factors and the recognition and the patting and the applaud are all, metaphysical, are all conceptual. And he takes you all from the conceptual world to the world of, to the physical world. And he thinks that if you show an outcome, if you show a performance, if you show a reward, then this is what an employee is motivated by. So he concentrates on the ultimate goal and the outcome which will motivate. So expectancy theory is all about the outcome that you would see. I hope it would probably make more sense. However, there are some confusing aspects of how efforts, performance, and outcomes are related that you have to understand, and how an expectancy theory keeps an outcome which is not at the right level of motivation. There is some confusion, there is some drawback that we will try to look at depending on how much we can get to it. So this theory is a realistic approach to seeking goals and outcome. So if you look at the history of expectancy theory, it relies on the old equation. Effort, okay, equals better performance, which equals more rewards, which equals more value. So not intrinsically, not internally, but somehow Victor Vroom has used the word effort. And for effort, you need a motivation. This has been proved from in the past. So how effort is related to performance, or effort is greater than performance, and performance is greater than outcome, is what this theory is about. And you can see how a person will achieve his goal depending on the outcome. For example, for a project well done, for a project well delivered on time, the reward might be a number of new projects, okay? So the reward for the employee who has done a good job on his project is actually a number of projects, which might not be as motivating as a different reward. So in actuality, the reward for this project well done should be time off, right? Or a vacation, something like that, but rather than giving a number of projects. So this keeps the employee less motivated because this is not based, or this is not at the right level of motivation. So this is one of the drawbacks of the expectancy theory, because it only relates to efforts is greater than performance, performance is greater than outcome. So this is what it will keep, and then the reward is usually something more physical, something more relating to an outcome, which people may not like. You'll run into these applications at your workplace where you see that there is a contest going on and the winning team will get a free pizza. Does it motivate you? No. Why? Because the level of satisfaction is not there. The reward is not at the right graph on the motivational, from motivational aspect. So in the same case, a small contest within a company, to achieve more sales, say have a reward of a new car, will not make sense, will not motivate people, because they know, either it's not going to happen or it's not true. So the expectancy theory is all about showing the outcome, as a reward. But sometimes the outcome, the reward, the goal is not properly placed, when it comes to raising the motivation. So that's what, the expectancy theory is about. There are two factors in there. One is E, efforts, P, performance, and R for reward or outcome. Now, Victor Vroom's theory was introduced, back then, as a supplement to the major other theories. And then, however, his theory was not complete, until there was in consideration these three factors, okay? The three factors are balance, expectancy, and instrumentality, okay? Balance is the positive and the negative aspect of the value placed by the individual on any specific task or any specific factor of motivation. So some people, as you may see, place a high value, a high level of, praise for certain things. So it's a psychological value assigned, whether it's positive or negative by an individual, is the first variable in understanding the Vroom's theory of expectancy. How would you expect? And then expectancy is the next variable, which changes because it seems that every person is different and every reward is different. How each reward would lead to increased performance. And then you have instrumentality. This is also a very important aspect as to how the reward will be beneficial. They say that, in accounting terms, the appraised value, the appraisal was instrumental towards the closing of the deal. So this is relating to a number, okay? How would you perform to a certain number, okay? And how would you be rewarded with that number? So these are the three variables that Victor Vroom has defined as a part of his expectancy theory. Here, what you would apply is how importance is placed by employees. So how would you relate this to your team? Say you are a leader, you are the team manager, or your team leader. How would you understand balance and expectancy? You would try to get an idea about what the employee is made up of, what his value on the task is based off, or what would be the appropriate reward in terms of placing a psychological aspect. Do you think his reward would be time off as opposed to giving him a new car, something like that? So you'll have to get the information, okay, as a leader, to improve their level of motivation as a part of expectancy theory. Because a lot of organizations have a lot of rewards that don't make sense, right? If you're giving an employee who needs the basic care, health care, a luxury item, then it would not be of value to him. Same way, you would gather information about how the increased efforts will lead to increased performance, which means that here the leader will, after gathering information, will try to understand what or how he would be comfortable doing the work, what kind of resources is needed, and what would be an aspect of reaching the goal for him based on his vision of the reward. So you would have to sit down and talk to him to come up with the right reward. For example, a lot of managers and leaders will kill the expectancy theory of hard work performance by not placing the appropriate reward, by not placing the reward that's linked to their performance. For example, employees would like to have their ideas taken seriously, right? And they would like to be empowered, and they would like to make that split-second decision. Now, without understanding the expectancy theory, you wouldn't be able to understand what or how empowerment could be a reward, or how having their ideas taken seriously could be a reward for them, and how giving them the required self-esteem and respect would be a reward from them. This is seldom missed because, once again, this is the deficiency in understanding the soft area. You know, the topic, is your boss emotionally intelligent? It's a very common, very fashionable topic these days. Is your boss emotionally intelligent? What does it mean? Does he understand your requirement? What does it mean? Does he understand your goals, your outcomes? And what would be your reward? You wouldn't be interested in a Rolex. You wouldn't be interested in time off, but you would only be interested in having the recognition, and how he would announce your achievement in public as opposed to in discreet, because some employees don't want it to be announced in public. They want it discreet. So these are the things that come up as a part of instrumentality, or being instrumental in rewarding the employees with the right goal as a matter of motivation towards achieving their outcome. So here the E, P, and O are all related, are all directly proportional. E is greater than P, and P is greater than outcome. Effort is greater than performance, performance is greater than outcome. So this is the aspect of Victor Vroom's expectancy theory. This is what to expect and how to achieve based on the performance. It starts with efforts, and of course you need motivation for efforts, okay? And how efforts is directly related to the outcome, and how the outcome will by default increase the performance, and how the performance that is increased will somewhat improve the efforts, and efforts require motivation. You know, this is how you can understand the expectancy theory. So these three variables would have to be high for the best level of modification. Okay, the balance expectancy instrumenting would have to be at a high level to understand, to have the highest level of modification as per this theory. So I told you we already talked about expectancy. Review.
Fernando and Jerome were running the newsroom at their local newspaper. Unfortunately, things weren't running very smoothly, and most of the reporters' desks were cluttered, and the office was in a state of disarray. They had no idea how to motivate the employees towards their publication goal. Fernando suggested they discuss the valence, expectancy, and instrumentality in the workplace, and figured out that whilst the end goal and incentive was clear, their employees simply didn't have enough hands to complete the job on time. Fernando and Jerome immediately set to work, helping each reporter refine their work and put in place a plan to hire more help. Both men were pleased that they could make the publication date on time.
All right. That's mostly that for today. And let's look at some supplementary topics as to the personality's role in motivation. We all understand the importance of personality. Soft skills is all about understanding personality, playing with your emotions and understanding the other person's emotions. So there is no the hard and fast rule as to what type of skills are required. But in most cases, the skills that an employee has or a group of employees has were seldom known as soft skills. They were just known as different names given, like the mother's, personality, and then a skeptical person and a humorist. Okay, we didn't have the soft area back then, but then it was very important to understand your personality type and to have a right mix of all the personalities in the workplace. And we'll look at 4 major personalities that you have to understand how a mix of all of these would be optimal to the requirement for motivation. So you have to identify your personality type. Personality is that aspect of your character that emerges when you are among a group of people or different personalities. And that's the aspect of your character that emerges when you're doing a certain job, okay? And then how would you identify other personality? You would speak to them and monitor them how they would conduct themselves. Okay, you speak and monitor. Hold ice-breaking or getting to know section. What is the other name for this? Small talk. Who is the dominant character? Who's pragmatic? Who's lighthearted? This is about the personality type. There are 2 personalities, type A and type B. Type A is the aggressive, fast-moving. Type B is the slow. But everything that we dealt with so far had been relating to personality type. So if you look at these 3 boxes here, what does this ring a bell? What soft skills topics that emerges, that comes on your radar? It should be very easy for you to tell me. How would you monitor yourself and how would you speak to other people? Small talk. How would you be a dominant factor? How would you hone your skills? Okay. And how would you infuse the right skills which are socially related to your sociological aspect, such as emotional intelligence quotient. So that's how you would understand personalities. How would you motivate by personality types? Now there are 4 types of personalities that we're concerned about. I'm going to say it here, it's not here. The first one is a problem solver. Okay, everyone likes it. But the second one is a nurturer. Okay, and the third one is a humorist. And there is a fourth one who would take care of the consensus. So we have a problem solver, consensus builder, and a humorist. And what was the fourth one? I said, forgot. So let's look at a problem solver. Okay, are you a problem solver? You can type a yes or a no on the chat box, but we'll get to it. And are you a nurturer? Okay. And the third one, are you a what did I say? A consensus builder. And the fourth one is, are you a humorist? Yes or no? Don't be behind calling yourself a problem solver, because with the problem solver, the problem would be solved, but it might be detrimental. We need somebody who is a consensus builder, which will make sure that the personality that's trying to solve the problem is not in his own interest, but it's in a general interest. Okay. And a nurturer who will try to keep the situation going into a crisis, and a humorist, which will keep you all going. So we need the right mix of personality types in a workplace, right? And this is how you would identify your personality, okay? Problem solver will be one-on-one, okay? We need terms like challenges and champions. This is a newer aspect of a learning organization. And then the target, the best in people. This is about how you will get to understand their personality type and give him the right task. This is the biggest challenge for a leader, to give the person the best possible task according to his personality.
Frank, Kelly, Joe, and Tyrone were all part of the team working on a new sales project for their firm, but were struggling to come up with good ideas to get the client. They didn't know which task to perform or who would best fit into which role until Frank suggested they identify each other's personality types. The others thought this was a fantastic idea and set to work using the Desert Island game to identify each other's personality types. This fun activity soon allowed them to identify that Frank was a problem solver, Joe a consensus seeker, Tyrone a nurturer, and Kelly a humorist. With their positions defined, the group was happy to tackle the sales project and contributed to the deal in equal parts.
All right, the second supplemental topic relating to your motivational aspect is seeking goals. We did this, and the most important here is to believe in the SMART goals. And how are goals and motivation related? It basically the outcome, the target that you meet, and how goals can be performance related play, and how competition can help, and a result. But most important is your goals that cannot be any goal, but would have to be SMART goals. And I think we have dealt with the SMART goals in time and in the last module also. And then how you would continuously seek on adapting yourself and evaluating yourself to reach the SMART goals. Let's wrap up.
Jerry and Ken were working on a drawing they needed to send off to their boss for approval. They were struggling to refine the drawing until Ken suggested they use the SMART goal technique to set a meaningful goal with regards to the needs of the drawing. Ken agreed, and they set out goals which were specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timed. Once they had realized that it was their deadline that had been stalling them, Ken and Jerry managed to set out a SMART goal which enabled them to complete the drawing and all its steps with minimal struggle. Both men were happy to hand it in the next week and pleased with the praise they received.
All right, the example that we used in the past about SMART goals was how to keep it specific, okay, like increase sales, and then 5%. It has to be, relevant, and then how it has to be attainable, not like 50%, and how it has to be timed. So you can refresh yourself with the example that we have used in time. This is about how to motivate yourself using your own personal tool. Now, this is for you to pick and choose how Hertzberg works out better for your team, for your own self, and how Maslow's theory of hierarchy or theory of needs will better fit in your situation. So you make a personal toolbox depending upon what your personality type is and how much time is available for you and how resources are available. So with this, you would motivate yourself, and you will continually go on motivating until you reach your goal. And once you have reached the topmost level, then there are certain ways of reenacting yourself or building yourself to reach an even more a higher level, because motivation is needed at the workplace. And then one can produce result, standard, substandard based on your level of motivation. But once the motivation is up, as it goes up, it improves your performance, it improves the outcome. And an organizational is also known as a motivational organization as opposed to a learning organization. So it has to be building on an ever growing motivational ladder. Here you take the optimist view of the example here used as the glass half full as opposed to the glass half empty. So this is to set up the glass half full mindset. so as you can motivate your employees or keep growing towards, adapting and evaluating yourself.
Jessica and Cassidy were in the midst of a discussion about employee motivation and were struggling to reconcile their lack of motivation with their surroundings. The firm had recently undergone cutbacks and was facing a series of smaller challenges, but nothing that should implement wide-scale demoralization. Jessica suggested that they talk to their employees about the problems which had arisen, and Cassidy agreed. They discovered that the employees were suffering under the weight of the challenges and have a negative outlook, until Cassidy told them about the glass half full concept and changed their perspective on the issues at hand. Both Jessica and Cassidy were relieved when their employees returned to work with a more positive outlook.
All right, the best application of this webinar is to have your own motivational toolkit and be motivated using the theories that we have, and it would be up to you to decide what tool motivates you better. All right, we're going behind time. We're going beyond time. I hope you all can manage maybe 10 more minutes, because we lost like 10 minutes or so during the tech, due to tech issues in the beginning. So the majority of the topics are done, but I just want to wrap up with one topic, which is morale. And we'll get to that on how we can get to maintaining the employee morale. All right. With the motivational tool, you're introduced to a motivational organization. You may have heard of a learning organization, how the different aspect of learning is utilized in a series ascending order. Same way, you will be looking towards creating a motivational organization. And then this is by saying that the organization is only as strong as its employees. And the employees are as strong as its weakest member, okay? So you have to understand here that the organization is as strong as its employees, but the employees are as strong as its weakest member. So you have to look at the bottom-most aspect of your motivational level, how you can bring it up. So you need to come up with the policy, with the environment, with the challenges, with everything that you saw as a motivating factor in Herzberg's model, as well as everything on the topmost level of the hierarchy in the pyramid by Abraham Maslow.
Kevin and Tyrese were starting up their own company, a theory which required a lot of employees. They'd spent days brainstorming the positions and different types of personnel they would require for their business to succeed, but hadn't received any applications. Kevin suggested they revisit their methodology and discuss the kinds of jobs employees are after, and Tyrese agreed, and then pointed out that they needed to create motivational jobs, one where employees are pushed to better themselves with achievable bounds. Kevin and Tyrese set out boundaries and reevaluated the positions they were offering. They were overjoyed when they received applicants a few days after posting the new jobs. Kevin?
All right, let's look at a very specific morale related issue when it comes to employee motivation. Now, you all understand we use the term low morale, okay? Don't put him down. That will not boost his morale is the most important thing. So the point here in understanding the aspect of motivation is to always boost the morale of employees. So do not be biased. Do not bring in favoritism. You don't need to say this, but morale leads to a company morale or a team morale, and the team morale will lead to achievements. And the downside is the morale, when it's down as an individual, as a team, will impact the entire organization. And one of the reasons why organizations file bankruptcies or get bankrupt is because an employee morale. So if you ask a coach as to what a team morale is, then he can never appreciate it enough. Many teams, the best and the best of the teams who are equipped with the best and the best of resources and world-class team players, whether it's a sport or an individual, a business project, fail because the morale was compromised or it lacked the morale that they needed. And many times in World Cups, in the world-class competitions, very, very impoverished teams and very, very poor players, not equipped with anything, won the World Cup. Why? Because they had the team morale. They had, the sense of confidence relating to each other's, morale and each other's spirit. And then they did not go for their personal benefit. They did forego gratifications for a greater good. So if you ask a coach, or if you see these world-class happenings where teams win, the highest and the best of the award by just having a morale. And this is also portrayed best in, in business cases, movies, that I always refer to. For example, in Gladiator, if you remember, how, a very impoverished team of small warriors, with the team morale and the skills needed, won the highest championship back then, movie Gladiator, and many other examples. So it's a mental state of being confident, okay? It needs to be having a boost. It's very relevant in the workplace. Employees should see this as a support. So how would you address team morale? If you see somebody down, the first thing that you would do is intervene as a leader, intervene as a coach, intervene as a supervisor. But if you don't ask them, then it will get, in the backseat and it will start building. So a manager would have to be proactive. If you're a manager, if the purpose of you understanding the motivation would be defeated if you don't take care of your team morale. If a person is sad, you need to ask him. If a person looks different, you need to ask him. If a person looks unhappy, you need to ask him. Because empathy can never be appreciated. Remember, empathy always comes first. When it comes to a competency and impetency, these two are important at the workplace, hard and soft. However, the order is important. Empathy always comes first, all right? So favoritism, by no means, you're getting a company towards bankruptcy. What to do when the whole company is demotivated, all right? The employers, the leaders play, the team managers and the program managers play an important role when it comes to the high boosting the morale. So they would need to immediately call for action. They would have to sit down and talk to employees one-on-one. All the topmost people would have to come down at the lowest level, answer all the questions, not for the sake of answering, but in reality. But if you feel that you're just going to buy some time by giving them false hopes, then team morale will not be up. There are many and many cases of businesses that went down because the top management was always interested in its own benefit and never cared for the morale. So if you have a distribution which is not equal, or not having a distribution of benefits within an organization, will not help the morale. And if you see that the topmost manager is at the topmost level, enjoying the topmost dining areas and the topmost executive benefits, then the team morale would have to be looked upon.
Josephine, Larry, and Delia were working late trying to finish a project that was due the next day. Josephine and Larry were motivated to complete it because they didn't want to let their boss down and longed to get home to their families. Delia, however, wasn't as motivated at all and delayed the project because she couldn't focus on the work and needed to take several breaks. Josephine discussed this with Larry, and they decided to chat to Delia and deal with her individual morale issue. It was then they discovered that Delia was having personal problems. Together, the three discussed the best path forward, and Delia brightened up considerably. They were all happy when they completed their tasks on time.
All right, morale is about equality, rights, interpersonal, emotional, and most importantly, empathy. All right, let's move on to our last side topic. How would you keep yourself motivated? We talked about these different theories that you would have to pick and choose, but the indicators of the behavior remain the same, linked to the motivators and the factors of dissatisfaction. So with that, how would you keep yourself, how would you keep yourself motivated, and how would you keep yourself up? So this is a continual process where you would go on maximizing your motivators with regular evaluation. Mentoring comes into the play. Give me water. Hi guys, sorry. Work in the fast and balance. So this is for you all to continue. This is for you all to continue evaluating yourself, and adapting yourself, and not to have your work or your job on autopilot, because that is a demotivator. Having a steady, a plateaued income or a plateaued lifestyle will demotivate you. So the one good thing for those of you who are in the topmost position is to motivate yourself by seeking new goals and seeking new outcomes and seeking new rewards. And it goes on all the way up to having a new coach, a new mentor, or having a new lifestyle, having that sports car, all the way up and to having maybe that Rolex and so forth. So that completes our session with this video. And my apologies for going beyond time.
Motivate their employees. Their company had been in service for 10 years, and some of the older employees were struggling to stay motivated in their positions. Isaac suggested they set up a motivational seminar for their employees and treat them to a team-building weekend where they would discover ways to maximize their motivators in their specific work positions. Both Dean and Caitlin agreed, and they set up the motivational seminar. In the end, all three of the partners were happy because their employees revealed their motivational cues and allowed the company to harness them and move towards a brighter future.
All right. So, like I said, my apologies for going beyond time, but we have 10 more minutes if you would like. I'm available for questions. And we'll be back with our last topic of the series, which is leadership and influence next Monday. But till then, feel free to reach me for any queries that you may have. I'm open now for any questions that you may have for another 10 minutes. So back to you, Ms. Himera, and to the moderators.
Thank you. Thank you, Shah, for today's lecture on employee motivation. It is our pleasure to be able to listen to you. Learning from such an expert coach and a speaker is so gratifying. So let us move on to Q&A session now. But before, I would just like to ask Saeed Bhai if he wants to add something to the session, like about the LMS or assessment, or...
Yeah, thank you so much. I just joined late because I had some personal emergency to attend.
It's all right. We understand. Thank you.
I'll quickly, talk about the LMS for like 2 minutes, and then the Q&A session can start. So the thing is, the content for today's course that was, on the employee motivation, that will be uploaded, latest by tomorrow morning. So all the users, who are already on the LMS, you can directly, access the course from your dashboard and also take the assessment. And for those who haven't signed up, I assume that the link has already been given in the chat, so you can always sign up and then take the LMS courses from there. And this course will be available until next week only. Assessments for all the other courses are open, so you can take them per your convenience, but before next week itself. This is what we have. And for any queries on LMS, I believe an email ID is being circulated, in the chat window. So you can always write in there, and we'll try our best, inshallah, to attend on those queries. Thank you.
Thank you, Saeed Bhai. So, we will move on to Q&A session. So the first question comes from Mukhtar Hussain Saab. How to improve our motivation in early educating children?
How to improve our motivation in early education for children. Okay.
Children. Yeah.
Well, here you would stick to the theory of the carrot and the whip and get the best out of it. So that applies to different learners, and whip is not to be encouraged. However, the carrot and the whip and the plant theory is what applies for early education, where when you eat your veggies, you get a free pudding, something like that. And when you push your sister, you get your time off. Next question.
All right. So the next question is, which parameter need to define the behavior?
Which parameter?
Need to define the behavior.
Well, behavior is an indicator attached to your competency. So for undesirable behaviors, you have undesirable outcomes. This is how you would look at it. So when you see a change, needed in the behavior. You look at those 4 steps we talked about, from identifying the behavior, setting up a frequency, and doing a consequence.
All right. So moving on to the next question, it is coming from Miss Malika Sayed. Which theory will be more helpful in dealing with stubborn and hyperactive students?
Students, well, make sure they are well fed, well kept in the environment. So it's your liking. It's mostly between Herzberg's model and the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You would have to decide and give them the best motivators, and most importantly, take away the dissatisfactors. Try to keep those dissatisfactors absent.
All right. So the next question is from Sayed Abuzar. Is it the right approach to keep on having our employees continuously rather than be productive results? If we do so, we are making our employees uncomfortable and not given personal space.
Well, you would keep them motivated by not giving them extra work, but by only giving them so much that's required. Because there's such as, in order to keep them motivated, you try to loosen up the job. And sometimes you give them so much that the efforts are wasted. So you need to have a right mix of efforts here to keep them motivated, linked to the incentives. That's very important. It has to be linked to the incentives.
All right. So the next question is from Ms. Indira Srinivas. By following which theory helps us to become a good motivator?
All theories, you have a choice to use whichever you want, but all theories will help you motivate in different scenarios, because every person is different. Every personality needs to be motivated in a different manner. So you have to decide. You have to study. These are long theories. And if you wish to apply it at your workplace, if you are a person in application here, then you have to do an in-depth study of these theories. And there are lots of videos to watch that you can enjoy and learn from it. But make sure that your employees are well fed. If not anything, give them a free lunch and feel the difference. Next.
Yes, the next question is from Dr. Mohammad Khurshid Akhtar Saab. What are the best motivational plans to apply in newly startup organization? How it will mitigate? What are the better motivational tools?
All right, take care of incentives, performance-based incentives, keep their goals realistic, apply everything that we need, SMART goals, and most importantly, give them the physiological needs that they need. Like I said, give them, a lot of freebies, and then give them the respect, but never disregard their ideas, and always empower them. Next, please.
All right, so the next question is, I would like to club 2 questions in one. How are people motivated? Is motivation always needed to or need-oriented?
Well, you have to provide them the needs. It's all about needs. So you have to understand if the person is motivated or not. If he lacks motivation, give him what needs to, take away his dissatisfactors. Take away the dissatisfactors and provide him the motivator. So give him the recognition at the workplace, give him the interpersonal relationship, give him the social aspect, give him a coach, give him a mentor, and take away, the biased environment, the unfriendly environment, and the lack of resources. So you have everything in front of you. You just have to decide what to pick. Next, please.
Yes, so I will be taking 2 more questions. So the second last question is from Syed Amir. In this pandemic situation, what should be the role of the staff to be motivated?
Well, this is the best time for personality development. So everyone's making best use of the time. And this is the time, this is the only phase where we can say we have the time. So make the best use of the time in helping yourself reach your goals, getting to whatever you can do, and most importantly, reading. There is a topic in the last module, we talked about how reading or learning can be an opportunity for you if you have the time. So the best thing that we have now is the time, and make the best use of it. Done?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So the last question,
Yeah.
however, I always encourage everyone to use Q&A session to ask the question, but I'm bound to take this last question from the chat. How to correct behavioral problems within ourselves is asked by Mr. Ammar Malik.
Okay, that's a very important question. You need to be focused on all your behaviors. It is said that you can read your behavior by recording yourself. So I'm sure there are people who will give you feedback on your behavior. Find out what the behavior is, and if there is a behavior that you like, copy that. Okay, copy that and try to imitate that. That's all the competency-based system is about, having it installed by the HRM to improve on your behaviors. And there are 4 steps to improving your behavior that we talked about today. So get to know, get a feedback, get a critique and a critical feedback and work on it. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Shah, for answering all the questions today. It is never enough to be able to express our gratitude to all our awesome attendees, and of course, not to miss you, Shah, for making these sessions a wonderful learning experience for all of us. It is truly very important for all of us to be satisfied and happy in whatever we do. So as Mr. Lu Walt said, your talent determines what you can do. Your motivation determines how much you are willing to do, and your attitude determines how well you do it. So be confident and motivated enough at your workplace to be able to conquer the world. So to all the attendees, it is always a pleasure to have you all on board for our sessions. I'm sure through these learning sessions, which AMP has organized in collaboration with Riyadh Academy and Swifty Learning Services to benefit the youth of the society and nation as a whole, you all will get benefited in many ways. So keep joining us in these sessions to learn from our highly qualified and expert speaker, Mr. Shah Siddiqui Saab. You can always spread the word about us and our sessions. Keep yourself updated through our website, www.ampindia.org/pastwebtalks. If you want to join us, kindly visit www.ampindia.org/joinamp. Looking forward to seeing you all again on coming Monday, that is 3rd August at the same time, 7:30 p.m. IST for our next session. So in case you have any query, you can write to us at office@ampusa.org. I'm Homera, your host, signing off now. Take care, stay home, stay safe, and keep learning. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Goodbye for now. Allah Hafiz.